Are your leads killing your business? I dug around a bit and found that according to a report from HubSpot, 61% of marketers consider generating traffic and leads to be their biggest challenge. In fact, 53% of marketers spend at least half of their budget on lead generation, and 37.1% of marketers find generating high quality leads to be the biggest challenge. Further research indicates that 73% of B2B marketers use content to generate leads, but 80% of leads never convert to sales. So the issue of generating leads is a challenge that just about every business needs to deal with, but the statistics seem to entertain the possibility that the quality of leads could be literally killing your business. Our guest today has recently published a #1 best-selling B2B marketing and sales book titled, guess what? Are your leads killing your business? We'll be exploring this with him in just a moment. Hello and welcome to the Predictable B2B Success podcast, brought to you by Sproutwith.com. I'm Vinay Koshy, and our guest is Mark Osborne. Mark, you've been named by Ad Age magazine as a marketing technology blazer, and of course, author of the book that I just mentioned. You have well over 2 decades of experience creating revenue systems for SaaS technology and B2B service firms. In fact, I believe you've deployed data-driven analytics and media optimization solutions for many of the Fortune 500 companies and forged successful partnerships with the likes of Meta, Google, and X, formerly known as Twitter. I'm curious, Mark, this idea of generating high-quality leads, was there a particular event or incident that triggered this journey to now being a fractional CMO and advising businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question, Vinay. I don't know that it was a single event, but certainly in the statistics that you called out at the beginning about how much effort is put into sort of lead generation has certainly been true in my career and working for companies and growing them. But the thing that I started to realize, many years ago was that there's a big difference between just generating leads and generating the right leads. And one of the things that I saw that was particularly powerful when working with early stage companies was that bringing in the wrong clients, the wrong customers, really distracts you from your core business and your core value proposition. And you start customizing your solution not for the marketplace, but for these sort of your worst customers. Those worst customers wind up churning and not renewing, not growing. They require a lot of special attention because they don't really understand your buying vision or your product vision. And so they distract you from building that core solution. So while on the surface, a business may look quite healthy, bringing in those wrong customers can actually create this death spiral that distracts them from their core mission. These poor fit leads require a lot more effort to try to sell them in, a lot more effort to serve. And then as a result, that really kills a business. And so looking at the difference between companies that were attracting the right prospects and then accelerating them through the sort of sales pipeline and then activating those clients for referrals, renewals, and upsells really led to this development of systems that I've seen create significant improvements for companies, oftentimes doubling pipeline revenues in as little as 90 days. And we generally will tell people that most of our clients experience about a 10x return on their investment with us through B2B growth in just under 6 months or less.
Wow. I'd love to unpack that some more, but I'm also curious, what would you say, given your journey to date, would be your personal area of strength?
My personal area of strength?
Yeah.
For me, it all comes down to systems. And I am a big believer, and actually there's another Australian, David Jennings, who wrote Systemology, and big proponent of that approach because systems really do set you free. They encourage you to document the best practices in your business that allow you to always be your best self and really encourage you to continually improve, that sort of Kaizen continual improvement concept. You just really can't do that without systems in place. And so it's that ability to really understand a critical client flow and then build the systems that will allow you to attract those right prospects, accelerate the opportunities through the pipeline, activate clients for renewals, upsells, and referrals. Having those systems allows you to really accelerate that growth in your business because without those systems, you're really just guessing. And so it's that fine line of the right amount of documentation that captures the sort of critical steps, but not over engineering it so much that it just becomes cumbersome and weighs down the organization. And so finding that fine line is something that is where I like to put a lot of emphasis and what I see be really powerful for our clients.
Mhm. A lot of people would probably agree with you with what you just said, but would you say that finding that fine line is what most businesses don't know in that area of personal strength?
The fine line about like how to find that balance between over
Yep.
documenting and
Yep.
documenting just enough. Yeah, it's funny. The benefit of having done things a lot of times with a lot of different companies of a lot of different size really gives you that frame of reference. And I spend a lot of time researching it. And so I have a lot of documented kind of benchmarks for companies of different size, that what I've seen companies do. And so that once you have those benchmarks of what does success look like, you can then start to reverse engineer, how did they get there? What were the things they were doing that allowed them to achieve 30% of their leads from referrals, for example, which is like a pinnacle best practice that we look at when we talk about activating our clients for referrals. And so working backwards from those KPIs and those benchmarks allows your team to get really creative. The other thing that I think really guides success there is bringing in what I call a revenue team. So not having marketing work in one silo and customer success work in another, and then sales off on their own little island, but really bringing together your marketing folks, your sales folks, and your customer success folks, having shared KPIs that measure success that's about more than just vanity metrics, but that's really connected to the business success. And so that each of those teams can bring their own unique perspectives and finding solutions to achieve the growth and to build the systems that will allow you to have the success that you're looking for. And creating that alignment through systems across the teams really creates a much better environment. Then you have people managing the systems instead of finger wagging at people. And then people can really come together and collaborate in a really powerful way when they're working together on systems against those shared objectives.
Would you recommend taking an 80/20 rule or approach to generating lead volume?
Yes. The way that we will work through lead volume questions is really working backwards from, well, what's the growth that we want to have in the business? And for a lot of early stage companies, they're typically trying to double every year and to achieve that type of growth. So if we look backwards, take your ideal customer, your top 20% of your revenues, and really understand that ideal customer profile. And one of the things that we do that's a little bit different is we really want to unpack the context that company was in that drove them to market to look for the type of solution that a particular company is providing for them. Because it's that crucial understanding of the context that's really oftentimes much more indicative of whether it's going to be a successful sale and then ultimately a long-term successful client. And so by understanding the context that drove your tier one ideal customers to go to market, and then also capturing all of the firmographics about the firm themselves, and then building out avatars or personas of the different members of the buying committee, whether it's the economic buyer, decision maker, or the champion, all of those different roles. By really understanding that ideal customer and that tier one ideal customer and what sent them to market, you can do a much better job of attracting those right prospects to you by having a differentiated positioning strategy that not only talks about your benefits and your unique benefits, but also enunciates your long-term vision, like why your reason to exist and why your approach, your different approach, is superior to all others in the marketplace, so that it generates demand while creating awareness instead of just focusing on awareness generation or just demand capture. You really need to have messaging that does all, both of those things at the same time. And the way to get there, strong understanding of the customer, strong understanding of the competitive landscape, so that you can then pull out your differentiated positioning strategy from that.
Okay. Would you say that to create the right environment, you really need to hone in on the competitive advantage of the company as well as the overall purpose and vision of the company as perhaps a more fundamental requirement before we start building out all those ICPs and all the rest of it?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that all marketing starts with the market. And so it
Hmm.
really starts with a strong understanding of the customer. But the sort of the companies that I see really have outstanding success in the space are those that really have a product vision and a buying vision that is different from the competitive landscape. And it's built around a central premise of where the world is heading, where the world of their space
Right.
is heading. And there are certainly a lot of companies that work within the data and machine learning, artificial intelligence space right now. And there are different schools of thought around what is important
Mm.
in that space. And as you're building solutions, I've worked with companies that they really believed that the core differentiator for good success within their category was good data. And so they really positioned themselves on the strength of their underlying data that they used, and that why that made their product or their solution better for the marketplace, and why that should be the primary criteria that people use to evaluate vendors like that. I've worked with other SaaS companies that in similar spaces, but somewhat adjacent, that really focused on the strength of the analytical models and the statistics and data science that goes into it more so than the data. And then they put forward this sort of vision into the marketplace that it's the approach that matters more than it is the data.
Mhm.
Anyway, you can get data from anywhere, but it's really having that strong belief about where the world is heading and why your approach is the right approach for solving the problem, that allows you to have this really differentiated positioning that will resonate with a certain segment of the marketplace that goes, yeah, I understand why. I can see the logical connection. And now that I have that understanding and that belief, I can understand why you would be the right choice for me. But again,
Mm.
strategy is about what you choose not to do. You can't be right for everyone. But by really understanding your long-term vision for the space and how you're building your product to intersect with that future state, that's what really allows you to have that powerful positioning in the marketplace.
I'm also curious, would you say that there are perhaps aspects to this idea of understanding customers and picking through the data that at least if some companies seem to miss out on or gloss over? If so, what would they be?
Oh yeah, for sure. So there is so much data available to us today and so much technology to help us make sense of that data that you're really behind the times if you're not taking advantage of it. However, the recommendation that I have is to really start with, again, what's the goal? What's the purpose? And to get at that, thinking from a systems approach, if you have a system for qualifying your leads, your prospects before they move into sort of sales motions, certainly one of the pieces that you would want to have in that solution is some kind of intent data, whether it's sourced directly from the customer that you're asking them about it, or if you're licensing some third party intent data that you can use to identify that people from this company have been researching this type of solution, or whatever it might be. But it really needs to start with the strategy. And the strategy is, we want to do a better job of servicing our tier one, most qualified, ready to go prospects. And so now we need to have the data and the technology to make sense of that data that will allow us to identify them, rather than starting with, here's an interesting piece of data. How do we use it? And that's oftentimes a recipe for disaster, because it creates a lot of distraction and a lot of shiny object syndrome. And it's the consistency that you get through systems delivered over and over at scale that leads to the growth and success that companies are looking for. I You mentioned before, Ad Age named me a marketing technology trailblazer. I had all of the certifications and all of the technologies, and really prided myself on having access to a lot of technical kind of tricks. And the idea of kind of gaming the algorithm or growth hacking was something that was, really important to me for a long time. But I came to this realization that that's not where the success comes from. It's not from gaming an algorithm. It's not from finding some growth hack. It's from having a really structured, strategic approach to building systems that scale, and then layering in the data, the technology, finding little hacks that help you make those improvements along the way. That's how you really get that exponential growth that companies are looking for.
I wonder if you could give us an example from your experience where you've been able to work with a business that successfully redirected their efforts towards high value leads and as a result saw a transformative approach and break down the framework that you generally advocate for businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad you mentioned the framework. So the framework that I break out in the book, and first off, I want to make the book available to all of your listeners. So if you go to modernrevenuestrategies.com/free download, you can get a free copy of the book there. It's complete with a lot of templates and calculators and other tools to help you implement this for your business. And one of the things that I talk about in the book that worked really well. So I was working with a early stage SaaS company that their competitors were really outspending them. Had all of the advertising at all of the conferences and in all of the sort of trade publications, and were even buying business by having really inexpensive contracts with marquee clients. And so they were more of a bootstrapped organization with just some angel funding. And they were trying to figure out how do we do more with less as we're trying to take on these much larger competitors that they were really outgunned from a spend perspective. So the answer wasn't spend more on advertising. It had to be, we have to make every dollar we spend more effective. And what we did is we started with and really looking at what's different about our ideal customers from our competitors. And when they really looked at their best customers, they saw that they had actually done a better job than their competitors at connecting with ad agencies. This was an ad tech solution. It was actually a machine learning enabled solution for targeting ads on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And so most of their competitors had been going directly to the CMOs and senior vice presidents of media at the brands themselves and been forging those relationships. And had really overlooked ad agencies and in some ways even derided ad agencies as a middleman, but not, it wasn't the ideal customer, which was a common thought at the time, was that it was better to have relationships with the brands, not with the agencies. This company that I was working with realized we've actually built some toehold in the agency space. What is it that's different about what agencies need and that our solution does well? And so by understanding that there were some different needs for agencies, they were able to highlight how their solution really made it easy to do things at scale, to have multiple clients within a dashboard, which other solutions didn't do as well. And then to really do things at large scale, which a lot of the agencies were focused on for some of their larger clients. And then for the software to really be in the background and put them forward as the star. And so once they understood these differentiators and how that was uniquely suited to some sort of white space in the market, we did a campaign where we actually put agency logos on cakes. If you've ever worked with an agency, you know that they spend a lot of time working and they work through meals a lot. And so food is always a welcome gift at an agency. So we had custom made cakes with the agency's logo right in the middle and said, we make you the star for your clients. And we bleed into the background. We delivered 100 custom cakes to 100 of our high value prospect agencies, combined with an email set to be delivered exactly when the cake was delivered and a phone call follow-up, which really allowed them to glow and shine in the eyes of agencies and really carve out that niche within the marketplace, which ultimately led to them establishing themselves as a key player in the industry because they focused in on that unique capability by understanding their ideal customer profile.
Very interesting, and I love the example that you gave. You also talked about shifting from growth hacks to focusing on fundamentals. What would you say are some of the key fundamentals that businesses often overlook and but should integrate into their strategies?
So one of the things is this creating alignment throughout the organization. And when you have when you manage by systems instead of managing by directive, it creates a lot more clarity in the
Hmm.
organization. And that's been something that I've seen really powerful. And just that exercise of bringing together, and maybe it's just the sort of leaders of each team, marketing, sales, and customer success, but having that shared vision for who the right customer is, why we would be the right choice for them, and how we're going to deliver a solution in a way that makes them want to be a raving fan and renew and buy more from us and make referrals. Like having that shared vision across the marketing, sales, and customer success is really powerful. And that's something that I think is lost a lot, particularly when companies build little fiefdoms and their own little
Hmm.
empires of marketing people who are just focused on hitting their goal for MQLs, marketing qualified leads. And then they pat themselves on the back when sales is struggling because the leads that they're bringing in are really unqualified. Or
Hmm.
alternatively, salespeople that are saying anything to close the deal and get that deal over the line. And then the customer success team is just mired down and impossible to service clients, that it's really distracting the business and
Hmm.
starting this death spiral that we talked about before, instead of being primed for renewals, upsells, referrals, and all those important things. So that shared vision and that sort of shared scorecard, and I recommend
Hmm.
a weighted scorecard where you've got some KPIs that are tied to marketing and some KPIs that are tied to customer success. And maybe people on the customer success team are incentivized with a slightly different weighting against that
Hmm.
scorecard, but it's a shared scorecard. And everyone knows this is what we are working on as a business to grow, because then you find these really great ideas that come out of customer success about what the customers are valuing the most or getting the most out of the solution, that then informs the messaging strategy for marketing. And marketing has oftentimes really powerful ideas about ways to use some technology for getting messages out to the marketplace that then sales can use. And marketing doesn't have to stop at the lead. And oftentimes we see either post opportunity marketing or even post sale marketing be some of the most powerful things. But if you don't have this kind of unified view across, that's something that's really missed. The other thing is, and this pertains to it too, is
Hmm.
really mapping out that customer journey, and thinking through what are the informational needs that customers have at each stage, from deciding whether or not they should prioritize this project to solve this year, or what's going to be the financial impact of solving it. And there are multiple ways to solve it. Which way should we evaluate? And there are multiple vendors that do it that way. How should we evaluate
Hmm.
between those different vendors? Having a real solid understanding of the customer journey all the way through to the sort of second moment of truth of, should I buy again? Should I recommend this to colleagues? Should I provide a testimonial and do a case study? Having that clear view allows your company to really get much more creative, and to find ways to build trust and credibility and authenticity with customers that's not just buying ads. Because
Hmm.
buying ads is a way to build trust and to build sort of repetition, which sort of generates that trust. But if you can really understand the customer journey, you could find lots of ways to build that trust that aren't just buying ads, which are much more powerful.
I wonder though, is there a balance to be cognizant of between the systems approach and perhaps someone who's a little more forward thinking and willing to experiment in order to develop new systems as technology and the world kind of changes rapidly?
Absolutely. And from my perspective, that's part of the system, is that you
Okay.
plan for experimentation. And because you've got a system in place that has some guardrails, you can say 10% of my budget every quarter is going to be spent on trying new things. Or maybe it's 15 or 20, whatever the magic number is for your business. But that gives you the freedom to experiment and to try some of these tactical things that may help you get in there. However, if you start by identifying what's the best opportunity for growth, and we focus on these attraction systems, which is about attracting the right prospects, acceleration systems, which is about moving those opportunities through the pipeline faster, or activation systems, which is about activating clients for renewals, upsells, and referrals. When you start by identifying where's the biggest need, where's the biggest gap, where's the biggest opportunity, not only from an opportunity to grow, but also where do we have existing capability that's not being fully leveraged versus where would we need to hire. But so by creating priority through that, and then focusing on, all right, what are all of the different steps that go through that customer flow that we could improve. That's where you start to get these creative ideas of, hey, here's a thing we could test. Here's a tactic we could try. But you get there much better by the systemized approach of winnowing down to all of the different inflection points and opportunities to impact, rather than jumping at shiny objects. Because it's that distraction that will really keep you from achieving the growth that you want.
Certainly. Okay. I'm intrigued by this idea of storytelling and content. You just shared an example of sending out 100 cakes. Would you say that content should be created, and you probably certainly advocate for systems around that, but would you advocate for a system that consciously accelerates decision making with content?
Yes. Big believer in content. And in fact, in the book, we talk a lot about some of the big changes that happened as a function of the COVID-19 lockdowns and the pandemic. And one of the things that we found was that something like 80% of buyers in the B2B space say that all of the content that they encounter is of really high quality, but it contradicts each other. And so that makes for a real challenge for B2B services and SaaS companies to put something out there that can compete with this high bar of standard and also still be differentiated. And the way that we see companies successfully do that is by starting with that customer journey of knowing what is the series of steps that they would go through to become aware that they should even be looking into solving whatever it is that your solution is going to help them solve, to then understanding the financial impact of not solving it, so that they start to build a business case for solving it, to then looking at, well, what are the different ways that I could solve this. So understanding each step, and then the informational needs that a buyer will have in order to go through that step, and to know the informational needs by the different personas or avatars within your buying committee, because a financial buyer may have very different things that they care about than the end user, who might care more about how their life is going to be improved and how things will be faster, easier, better, whereas the economic buyer or the decision maker might just care more about how is this going to impact the bottom line. But by understanding those informational needs and what they care about at each stage, that guides the creation of content that can be really powerful and really speak to that customer where they are and where they are in their journey and with the most important issues. Far too often, I see companies try to sell on why me versus a competitor on content that's really intended to be top of funnel, which is really trying to grow the whole category, not trying to differentiate you from a specific competitive set. And so if you try to do two things at once, you do both of them poorly or not at all. Whereas if you have content that's designed to do one thing and one thing only, that sort of jobs to be done mindset about navigating that really squirrely customer path, that's how you get a much more powerful piece of content that tells a much more powerful story and is more persuasive for buyers.
With that in mind, would you suggest that we actively go about capturing case studies or case stories from each of our customers?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That case study and the sort of story of transformation that customers go through from working with a company, that's oftentimes the most powerful piece of content because it captures everything in that transition. I became aware that I had the problem. I started to evaluate ways to solve it. I landed on this way to solve it for these reasons. I then chose this company to work with because of these reasons. And here are the results that I'm now experiencing. Like that story can be really powerful, but you don't have to tell the whole story every time. You can use just portions of it and through the lens of the customer, really be much more powerful and connect with those potential customers in the marketplace.
Absolutely, I'd agree with you on that one. Obviously, as we're trying to chart this journey of helping our customers see value in the product and suddenly build a solution that would help them with their own objectives, we need to set the KPIs. Revenue is often the ultimate North Star metric for most SaaS companies. How would you recommend that we break this down in order to, as you alluded to before, ensure that we're having a transformative experience on the lives of the companies that we work with?
Yeah, so we use a few KPIs to help prioritize. First, is it attraction systems, acceleration systems, or activation systems that are going to make the biggest impact on your business? And one of the things that we look at there is we start to, and I actually have one of my sort of client forms here on my desk that I was looking at, but we'll look at sort of determine where of those three places to look at. We'll look at sort of customer acquisition cost and then sort of a payback period or CAC to customer lifetime value ratio, which is a pretty common thing. We'll look at pipeline quality as well as pipeline velocity as a way of understanding, well, how effective are your acceleration systems at taking opportunities and moving them through. And then we look at sort of percent of leads coming from referrals as a measure of how successfully you're activating existing clients. We also look at percentage of churn. It's like the net churn versus what you're able to grow from your existing clients versus what you lose from churning. And that starts to create some prioritization of, well, where is, for lack of a better phrase, like the closest shark to the boat? What's the thing that we have to solve first? And then from those kind of macro KPIs, we'll start to drill down and get very, very tactical from a sales perspective, number of days in pipeline on average. And if there's a lot of variation for really large accounts versus really small accounts, how is it different? What does that distribution look like within overall? And we have a series of benchmarks that we've put together from working with our clients and doing our own research that we can then use as a guide. Say, well, you're doing pretty good here. Maybe we're going to be better focused or better served to focus over here. There's also the old joke, like which do you tackle first? Well, we sort for that closest shark to the boat, and then get that to an acceptable level and to a level where it's really performing well, and then move on. We oftentimes see that it's easier to get an 8 to a 10 than it is to get a 2 to a 5. And the impact of getting an 8 to a 10 can be astronomical, versus going from a 2 to a 5 maybe really doesn't even make that much difference on your business. And so thinking through logically, although it feels really bad to have a 2, if we can get this 8 to a 10 really fast, maybe that's a better place to go. And one of the things that we focus on is really building sort of core competencies within our clients. So different from an agency or a consultant that wants to keep their clients dependent on them. Our goal is to build your capabilities so that you don't need us eventually, and so that you can bring in a full-time CMO eventually, and you've got the people, processes, and technologies built so that they're inheriting something that's ready to get to 100 million, and so we can come in and build those systems and hire, train, and really build those systems for our clients to get them there.
Well, certainly. With your accelerating systems, I wonder if you could elaborate on that a bit and also talk to us through this idea of balancing deal volume and pipeline velocity.
Yeah. So you notice that I talked about pipeline quality as well as pipeline velocity. And the reason is you want to look at what percentage of your leads fit your ideal customer profile. You're in that tier 1 ideal customer profile. And then what percentage of those that match are you able to move to building a proposal for and then move to closed won? Because if you don't have those systems in place, velocity really isn't that important. And so we will look at quality first and then add in the function of volume, which is where velocity comes from. But before we focus on volume, we want to make sure that we're attracting the right prospects, because otherwise you get this death spiral. It really brings the business down. And then one of the key things that we do that builds these acceleration systems is, again, much more integration between marketing and sales. And one of the ways that we do that is an account intelligence profile we use that has measures for qualification, so that the sales team agrees not only are they qualified from the right type of firm or the sort of firmographic things, but the context that they are in right now means that they're likely to actually buy within a reasonable time frame. So it's in the MedPick they talk about why it all, why us, why now. That why now piece is really important, and something that we really encourage as part of this sort of account intelligence profile, so that as it moves from marketing to sales, everyone's agreed that they're ready for really intense focus. And because we oftentimes will focus on quality before quantity, that allows us to have really intense focus on winning those best customers. And so that we can bring everything to bear to have those one-to-one conversations and those account-based marketing motions that really accelerate those deals through the pipeline, and bring marketing to bear so that they can use their tools and their muscles to promote different things about the business. And an example there is, it's one thing for a salesperson to email over a case study or an article or whatever it might be, or even a white paper that the company presented. What we have seen be really powerful is identify things within the sort of target customer that you part of their context, like they're losing market share in a particular market, and this solution is designed to help them grow that market share in that market. Publish an article on how the solution does that exact thing, and then make sure that article makes its way into the feed of those decision makers that care about. It's fundamentally the same content, and it's fundamentally being delivered in a similar way, but it has a much more powerful impact. And you can even find quotes from those target customers' leadership where they've talked about how this is an issue. Use that quote in the article, which then bring in those opportunities. Alexa, stop. Sorry, I had a reminder come on from Alexa. But by identifying those opportunities for marketing to use their tools to impact these sales conversations, you can get much more powerful results. By really aligning on those high quality prospects first, that's how you really get that acceleration that then you can bring in the quantity to sort of in that velocity.
Obviously, we've got systems for things like renewals, upsells, etc. Referrals. As I'm wondering about referrals, we've talked a little bit about capturing case studies, etc.
Yeah.
My personal experience is that a lot of companies struggle with this idea of asking for referrals and generating referrals on an ongoing basis. Could you talk to us a little bit about what it would look like to have a referral system in place?
Yeah. So the old joke is ask early and often. And one of the things that we see is quite literally just having a system that ensures that you ask for referrals at certain times is one of the most powerful ways to increase the volume of referrals that you can get. And so one of the systems that I like to put in place is at the close, the sales team has all of this knowledge about the customer. And as part of that, they develop a growth plan, a strategic account growth plan that then travels with that account into the customer success field. So again, this sort of continuity across these different teams. And as part of that initial sale, we usually will say, we want to do such a good job that you are proud to make a referral for us. And the first value delivery is going to be on X date. And so we actually even track what percentage of the time do we deliver against that first milestone on time or early? And then when we deliver on that milestone, we're going to ask for referrals. And you just say that out loud because it sets an expectation that you're going to do such a good job that they're going to be happy to make referrals. But it also puts you on the hook to do such a good job that you're proud to ask for a referral. The other thing that we do is if you think about your customer acquisition cost and think about that as a pool to play with in getting a referral, and you can pass along some of that savings to your existing clients as a way of thanking them for sending referrals, that incentivizes a lot of behavior. Can really be in bringing in more referrals and even more testimonials. And so not only we tell them that we're going to ask for referrals, but we use that as an inflection point to talk about a renewal or an upsell, knowing that we've got a little bit of money to play with to give them a discount on that renewal or upsell in exchange for those referrals. Where we have a referral that took place, the contract doesn't renew for another year, but next year rates are going to go up. If you renew now, I'll go ahead and tack on some extra time at the end at the current rate. And in fact, if we can bring in a referral, I'll even give you a discount. So having that sort of structured conversation takes a lot of the pressure off of renewals because it's not the last month of the contract and they've got us over the barrel. And instead, you're hitting it at that milestone of real value delivery where they're excited about the relationship. You're timing the conversations to when you're best positioned for that renewal, upsell, referral conversation and that ask. Getting creative with using that customer acquisition cost as a way of incentivizing your customers to make referrals is one of the more powerful ways I've seen it done.
Is there perhaps an aspect or two around this whole idea of lead generation that you're seeing doesn't get much airtime? If so, what would it be?
Meaning, like, is there something that people aren't talking about that they should be?
Correct.
I think the main thing, and this gets talked about, but it doesn't always get solved, which is this alignment between marketing and sales. It gets talked about a lot. And then, but I very oftentimes see companies just sort of, well, that's the nature of things. Such is it. Whereas the companies that go, why should it be that way? That realize the importance of solving that, whether it's through unified scorecard, whether it's through having a chief revenue officer that oversees both marketing and sales, whether it's through just facilitating collaboration and conversation across these teams, using things like account intelligence profiles to score and qualify opportunities and have that nexus between those two teams. That is one of the most powerful transformations that marketing gets so much better at identifying the messaging that's going to attract the right people, the mechanisms that are going to attract the right people, the processes that are going to bring in and facilitate them when there's that emphasis on it. And all the way through to the renewals and upsells and from customer success, that solving that and breaking down those barriers is one of the most powerful things that gets talked about, but then people are resigned to not always resolving it. It's worth investing the time, energy, and effort to resolve.
Fascinating and great insights again. Mark, to wrap things up, if you were listening to this episode, what would you say would be your top takeaway?
Systems set you free. I'm a big believer. We actually use that as a slogan, B2B growth systems to set you free.
Right.
Because again, by building a system that you can then manage, that invites collaboration. It makes it a lot easier for marketing to look over the shoulder of sales and say, have you thought about including this in your system? And it doesn't become a personal or adversarial conversation. It becomes, we're working together on a system, and then we manage that system together. So that's one of those really powerful things that I think creates that collaboration. And then it's those strategic fundamentals, really understanding your ideal customer, those buyer personas, your competitive positioning and sort of points of parity and differentiation to have really powerful differentiated positioning that then can be aligned to each stage of that customer journey, powerful and compelling content. Those are really those keys to success.
Brilliant. And Mark, if listeners are curious, want to find out more, connect with you, and get a copy of your book,
Yeah.
we'll include a link to the website URL that you mentioned. But I'm assuming the book is also available on
It
major
is.
retailers
You
like
can buy
Amazon.
it on Amazon. We've got plenty of 5-star reviews there, but I'm happy to give your customers or give your listeners a free copy. And in fact, I've been working with a number of companies recently. We see that companies that have a detailed and written marketing plan experience 4x the success of companies that don't. And so in an afternoon, we can put together a 90-day bulletproof marketing plan for customers. And so I've been offering sort of a free revenue systems out of strategy session. Sort of look at what's the current state of your revenue systems, what's the current state of your growth plan, and if there's an opportunity for us to put one together for you that can really propel 10x return on investment.
Brilliant. And your website is
modernrevenuestrategies.com.
excellent. We'll include links to that in the show notes. Mark, thank you so much for doing this. It's been brilliant.
Absolutely. It's been a real pleasure, Vinay.